This video is mainly about some events of the last decades and some terms that are related to them. The first event I'm gonna talk about is the Cold War. In general, it was a problem that USA had with the Soviet Union between the end of the World War II and the demise of the Soviet Union from 1948 to 1961. All of this started because the Soviet Union and USA had different ideas about economics and the government. They fought a war of ideas. The Soviet Union was a communist country, and in communism, the government controls production and resources, and it decides where people live and work. In contrary, the United States was a capitalist country. It's a capitalist country, where people and businesses control the production of goods, and they decide where to live and where to work. When the Cold War was finished, the dissolution of the Soviet Union happened. And that is the next event I'm gonna talk about. The Soviet Union was supposed to be a society of true democracy, but in many ways it was repressive. It was ruled by a single party, the Communist Party, that demanded the allegiance of every Russian citizen. After Gorbachev assumed the leadership of Russia, he tried to introduce new reforms. However, these reforms were slow to bear fruit. The old system had collapsed before the new one had time to begin working. Gorbachev started rationalizing and making shortages of goods. As a result, people grew more and more frustrated with this government. Everything got worse than ever for the Soviet Union, so each of their allies started to declare their independence and creating the Commonwealth of Independent States. At last, the mighty Soviet Union had fallen in December 1991. Unlike technologies such as the light bulb or the telephone, the Internet has no single inventor. Instead, it has evolved over time. The Internet got its start in the United States more than 50 years ago as a government weapon in the Cold War. But it was until 1980s when, because of the SERPs protocol, the Internet started to be used to communicate and share data with one another. One writer describes SERPs protocol as the handshake that introduces distant and different computers to each other in a virtual space. However, in 1991, the Internet changed again. That year, a computer programmer in Switzerland named Tim Berners-Lee introduced the World Wide Web, an Internet that was not simply a way to send files from one place to another, but was itself a web of information that anyone on the Internet could retrieve. Berners-Lee created the Internet that we know today. During the late 19th century, radical political theories and improvements in weapons technology spurred the formation of small groups of revolutionaries who effectively attacked nation states. In September 11, 2001, USA suffered from terrorist attacks. Militants associated with the Islamic extremist group Al Qaeda hacked 4 airliners and carried out suicide attacks against targets in the United States. 2 of the planes were flown into the towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. A third plane hit the flown Pentagon just outside Washington, D.C., and the fourth plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. These attacks resulted in extensive death and destruction, triggering major U.S. initiatives to combat terrorism and defining the presidency of George Bush. As a result of these attacks, the American giant launched an invasion first of Afghanistan in 2001 and later in Iraq in 2003, a conflict that eventually tumbled the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein. Since then, the phantom of terrorism has become an eminent threat in societies around the world. Why did globalization emerge? Globalization emerged thanks to technology and transports. USA wanted it to emerge quickly because they had the belief that trade will keep American inflation low. Global leaders started to open a local and nationalistic perspective to a broader outlook of an interconnected and interdependent world with free transfer of capital, goods, and services across national frontiers. In most cases, what caused the terrorist attacks of 20th century? Ethnicity, nationalism, separation, inequality, poverty and economic problems due to globalization, anti-democracy, dehumanization, and religion. How does the end of the Cold War relate with the unipolar world? In the 19th century, the world was bipolar, having USA and Earth as the superpowers. By the end of the Cold War, the Soviet Union disintegrated and lived in a unique superpower until today, USA. So now, due to the Cold War, we have USA as the one and only superpower. How has digital era influenced today's society? Digital era has influenced in the education, medicine, culture, work, etc. The whole world is adapting to the new technologies, making them a very important part of our life and almost depending on them. The internet is now the most important globalization advance in which you can speak with people, sell things, learn things, play, research information, etc.